Okay, we start this Sunset 4 meeting. So there is no magic. I'm neither Wes nor Mark. I'm Eric Vink. Yeah, I'm a live bot or whatever, right? I'm a guy in disguise. Mark has to leave the IETF yesterday to go to Amsterdam, and Wes is unable to join. So I'm Eric Vink, and I will be acting as your chairman here. We have a JavaScript. Thank you, Michael, for doing it. I am still missing a minute taker. Tim, minute taker? Do you volunteer yourself to be the minute taker?
I can if you give me a couple of minutes to.
Okay, so thank you, Tim, for volunteering somehow. Let's go further. Note well, we are Thursday, second session, so mostly you know that everything you say here is in the public, basically. Blue sheets, so they are circulating. Don't forget to fill them out. That's maybe next time we will get a bigger room, maybe. The agenda for today, a quick session introduction. That's what I'm doing here. Then we have given to Lee 45 minutes, talking about his old and new draft. And Emily Stark will be joining us at the end to talk about a specific problem about the local host name in HTTP mainly, but basically no application. I want to remind, because it may be open to discussion some point of time today with Lee's session, I took some extract from the Sunset 4 Charter. It really says the working group will point on specific areas of concern, which may be applicable here, provide recommendation and standardized protocol that facilitate blah, 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 blah. You can read. And at the end, the second bold statement, the working group will report on common issues, provide recommendation, and so on. Okay, so to keep this in mind, because it may be useful for the discussion during the Lee session. So thank you, Lee. And we have a clicker for you. And you know the ping box, right?
Hi, I had there. Am I on audio? Am I audible? I know. Oh, yeah, thanks, David. You're right next. You can hear me. Yes.
On the side as well.
So I had so much fun at our last meeting that I decided to come back and talk some more. Before I get into the draft, I want to sort of review some action items from the last meeting. This is sort of the notes that I took away from our last face-to-face meeting. First of all was we asked that suggested the IAB could make a statement to SDOs on IPv6. Done. We are still working on the mechanics of actually getting our liaisons to send that to the SDOs. Not all SDOs need that statement. For instance, or not all of our liaisons need to forward that statement. For instance, ICANN has actually done, they've got the website, they're not doing networking protocols, they're in pretty good shape, the statement doesn't apply. IESG statement on IPv4 work. So the ISG said, you know, we probably could say something about continuing IPv4 work or stopping IPv4 work, but it would be much stronger to have an IETF consensus statement on that. And that's why I'm back. So that's what I'm doing on that one. We could update the v4 historic draft. I've got a note on that in a minute. Draft PHP. Philip Hallam Baker had ideas about IPv4 sunset is complicated and what the steps might be. I've asked him a couple of times, hey, do you want to work on a document? Can I help? What would you like to see in it? And I haven't heard back, so that's what the status is there. Updating the ID NITS checker to check for IPv4 literals. That was done while we were in Buenos Aires. That was fantastic. Cleaning up documents that have v4 literals examples of dependencies. I don't think there's probably gonna be a major effort to go back and revise existing RFCs that have those, but it's something I think everybody ought to be paying attention to as we're seeing document drafts coming through. And I think we are seeing that. And then finally, running v6, running the IETF NAT64 SSID as our default SSID. Well, you heard about that at the plenary last night. John Brzezowski said, hey, we should totally do this. I think there was very positive response to that. I'm curious, how many people in the room are using or have been using IETF NAT64 at the meeting this week? Okay.
Okay, so people will not raise your hand. Are you sure that you're in the right room?
So, and I'm very curious why people who aren't using it. I will say that I'm not using it because my primary email account isn't working on that SSID. I can't pop my mail from my primary mail server. So I've opened a ticket with the NOC and said, this is an issue for me. If everybody would please get on that SSID, find out what breaks, open a ticket with the NOC, then we can start working through what are the broken issues and either then reveal issues back to IETF that need work or reveal issues to the companies. Some I think that's was it Spotify that was mentioned at the tech plenary. So we can go Skype.
So Mark, you can speak.
The real question is NAT64 the correct IPv4 over v6 protocol to use? There are others which have less impacts on the end user than NAT64 and NS64.
David Skenazy, Apple. I'd like to answer Mark's question. I won't make any comment on what the correct one is. There is no such thing, and we can rattle for days about it. NAT64 is the de facto one that is being used. It's the one that's being deployed by network operators today. Fact. So I don't think there is value in wondering what the perfect one or the best one is. We just need to pick one and move on. Otherwise, we'll never transition.
So too is DS Lite, MAP, and other things. Just because people seem to think this is the best for some inverted commas, the best. It actually has lots of operational issues which the others do not have. And as far as I can tell, it provides no benefits over the others.
It has one benefit, it's that it is there in the real world.
Well, so
too is DS Lite.
Right. Dual Stack Lite is also deployed in the real world. 464X Lite is also deployed in the real world in different
464X Lite is a NAT64 with client-side code,
well,
so it's the same thing.
The mechanic is much the same.
No, it's not the same thing. It's a subject.
Okay,
rat holing. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can push the mic queue quickly.
Jordi Palet. I think that's actually the problem. We need to first define what is our goal. And our goal is break things or allow the people to keep working without breaking things, and at the same time, make sure that everything will keep working in the future with IPv6 only. Because if that's the case, I mentioned already in the plenary mailing list, what we need to do is not use just a half solution like NAT64. We need a solution that behaves like in the real world. And the real world is people having private IPv4 addresses, and probably as more the times goes on, we'll have IPv6 only access. And that's not NAT64 because applications still use little addresses like Spotify, Skype, and so on. So what we need to do is to try that solution in our own network as primary SSID. And at the same time, in the CLAT, if, for example, we choose X464XLAT, in the CLAT daemon in our first hop router, have some kind of logging that allows us to identify what applications are using the CLAT, which means that in future meetings, we can have told those application vendors, this is not working, sort it out, and then we can go to a solution like only NAT64. But first, we need an intermediate stage.
Jelenko, I think there are a lot of networks around using, has been said, yeah, NAT64 with V6 only, yeah, because it's, from operational perspective, it's much better than having dual stack and DSLite and all this stuff. And I do not think that introducing this as a default IETF SSID will break anything, because there are other SSIDs that can always fall back to dual stack if you have problems. So I think we've done it at RIPE at some point, right? So it was communicated to users, please try V6 only. If you have problems, switch back to dual stack, and if it fixes your issue, okay, we know it's because of V6 only, right?
No, we need to stop here. It's not the main topic of Lee. Sorry.
I would think this is good for the list, though, right? We've started this conversation on the list. Let's carry it on there. All right, so I mentioned that I would come back and...
Okay, doesn't work. Next slide.
And next slide. So I have not updated V4 historic because I didn't think that folks were actually ready to talk about it anymore just yet. These are the three fairly minor notes that I had from the last meeting on the updates to make. So if you want other updates than that, send them to the list and I'll get them done. Next slide. So today's draft, end work on IPv4. Next slide. The abstract says the IETF will stop working on IPv4 except where needed to mitigate documented security issues, to facilitate the transition to IPv6, or to enable IPv4 decommissioning. This is what I was trying to get at. This is in some ways similar to the previous draft, but this is, again, the goal of this document is we had asked the IESG to make a statement about not chartering new IPv4 work, and that's what I'm trying to get at here. Next slide. I think it'll be incredibly boring if I actually read all the slides to you, because they're just sort of beads of text like this. But if you'll take 20 seconds to read this. Okay. Obviously, what I'm trying to do is give everybody a chance to read the draft. I have the entire draft up here. It's about 200 words. The one note I want to emphasize here, and I have it emphasized on the slide, is that IPv4 focused activities in support of security transition and decommissioning will continue, and maybe that should say or decommissioning, where accompanied by a problem statement. If nobody can, based on operational experience, if nobody can say this is an actual problem, it's just a philosophical problem or a speculated problem, let's not work on it. Okay, next slide. So we'll update protocols and features to facilitate decommissioning. We'll explicitly support IPv6, or if it's IP version agnostic because it's a higher in the stack, for instance, then that's fine. Except for we will still do IPv4, except IPv4 specific transition technologies, which I'll come back to on the next slide. To say we will not initiate any new IPv4 extension technology development. And the point there is we can work on, and this is a potential point for discussion, we could work on additional transition mechanisms. Maybe somebody has a great idea that we haven't come up with yet, and it's not too late to design and deploy it. I doubt it. But any future transition mechanisms we might work on, or enhancing our existing transition mechanisms, we won't work on IPv4 extension mechanisms. So IPv4 address sharing probably isn't a place that we really want to spend a whole lot more time, because there's only so much further we can go. Next slide. There is security considerations, pretty much the same that you've seen before. Maybe there will be an issue that we've discovered in IPv4. I don't know. I think it's been fairly robustly tested, but it's possible that there are inherent security flaws in the IPv4 spec. So if so, we can document and mitigate them. Next slide. There we go. So I'm looking for comments, and obviously I'm guessing we're going to want to make some revisions, but I would love to see whether this should be adopted as a working group document.
So I'm Chris Bowers, and I'd like to see some wording in there that allows for the IESG, when evaluating charters, to sort of include the impact, the actual impact, because so on, focusing on perhaps applications as opposed to, in my case, routing protocols. As a good example, OSPF uses as a system identifier a router ID, whereas ISIS uses a system ID. So I think it would be a bit a waste of time for OSPF to try to, now there is OSPF v3, but it's not been particularly widely deployed. And there's good applications for just straight old OSPF for carrying MPLS information, which can then carry IPv6. I think it would be a waste of time to try to make that router ID IPv6. And so I would like to see, though, so we don't have this argument later on, I'd like to see wording in here that makes that exemption pretty clear.
Yeah, I can see that. Technically, the OSPF router ID is not actually an IPv4 address, right? It's just a 32-bit integer that everybody uses an IPv4 address, right? But it's a fair, but I think, so,
yeah, just
so,
making that clear so that someone on the IESG who maybe doesn't understand that goes, oh, okay, yeah, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Hi, Aaron Hughes, 6Connect. Sorry, I'm not going to unravel that. So in your list of steps at the beginning of the slide deck, there are 6 steps in there. And I think the first 5 of them, missing a timeline, create some of the challenges and animosity that you're getting around. We're not done with V4 yet. If we added a timeline next to steps 1 through 5, we'd probably come to the conclusion that you're not going to get till step 6 until, years out, because there's so many things that need to be rewritten. I've been through projects that design routers that are v6 only, that include removing all 32-bit identifiers. And going through that process, we drafted updates to probably 100 different RFCs. So I fully expect that if we start along this path, we're going to need to spend quite a bit of time updating RFCs to get to this point where we actually have default being v6 only. And I'm in full support of this kind of work going forward. Thank you for bringing it to us.
So I think that we still have adopted as a working group an IPv4 gap or a transition gap analysis document, right? And that document is still open and still a working group document. And I think its specific goal is to list RFCs that need to be updated. So please forward that, and we'll get right on that.
Happy to help.
Yeah.
Hi, David Skenazy again. I have kind of a question on, or asking for clarification that should, I think, appear in the draft regarding new work that can be dual stack. What I mean by that, 2 examples that come to mind are HomeNet and the multiple interface PVD work. They're both v6 centric, as, oh, I am a host and I have these 2 v6 prefixes, what do I do with them? However, all these properties that we're getting from the network also apply to v4. In the case of HomeNet, if my memory, Pierre, tell me if I'm wrong, but my recollection of the HomeNet documents is that your home network may support IPv4. From reading the draft, it sounds like you're saying, oh, no, it shouldn't even say that. So I think that should be made clear, because I agree that these things should be more v6 centric, but things that do both should be okay.
Can you go back to statement 1 of 4? Because I think that's the one where I say, no, okay, go to the next slide. I think this is a wordsmithing comment, and I think we ought to find put the words up here. Next slide. Okay, so the bullet says the work will be capable of operating without IPv4. Right? So new IETF work, even HomeNet, explicitly supports IPv6 or is version agnostic. So HomeNet specifically supports IPv6. It also happens to support IPv4, which is great. But so I think that your point is actually covered in the text as it's
all right.
written.
Then we're on the same page. It's just a wordsmithing thing to make it clear.
And if you wanted to say it somehow differently, send text.
Tim Chan, the other thing I remember from the HomeNet architecture document is whether you then say doing something the best way for v6 only, whether that might somehow break v4 operations. So I think that's maybe another thing to consider in the statement.
And by the way, when you put it on, it goes better.
Pierre Pisser,
Really?
Cisco.
There's a power switch.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Pierre Pisser, Cisco. So I just want to confirm that I think the HomeNet charter and work is covered by these statements. We support IPv4, but we are not supposed to add anything to it.
Right.
So I think that's good.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
John Scudder. Can you go to the next slide?
Maybe.
When I read the draft, I think the only thing that jumped out at me as kind of weird was the not initiate new technology development. And when you talked over it, actually, I would summarize just now, I would summarize what you said as, well, we've pretty much covered that waterfront already. There's not really anything new to be, no more blood to be squeezed out of that stone. Which, if that's true, you don't even need to say so. And if it's not true, the technology will be developed anyway, because that's just how things work. So, I mean, I don't really care if you put that in the document or not, but I think it's kind of, either it's true anyway, or if it's not true, then it's not going to matter.
So it's a reasonable point. The reason I wanted to say it is that people keep coming to us with great ideas for new versions of IP, for instance. And new versions of extension new proposed extension technologies. I'd kind of like to give the IESG the club to just say, we don't even have to talk about this. We've already said we're not doing it.
Point taken.
So I use the example of router ID, and so for OSPF, this is Chris Bowers again. I'm curious the feeling in the room though on interfaces between routers that use v4 addresses, so that those are clearly v4 addresses and not 32-bit integers. Now, what I'm suggesting is that be extremely low priority in getting rid of, based on the impact on the overall transition to v6. So I'd like to be very clear about that I'm not just talking about router IDs.
So, and I don't think that we're saying that this statement actually tells us to go root out those things. It's saying we're not going to initiate new work that allows us to require IPv4 addresses.
So like an LSA that is in OSPF that would ride, the only place it can go is over an interface that has those properties.
That's
Where does that stand? So I would argue that, in terms of impact on, so networks that are running v6 only, enterprise networks, okay, they're running OSPF v3, but v2 would still have a function in service provider networks with a minuscule number of v4 addresses. So I think allowing for that decision to be made in this statement is a reasonable compromise.
Well, let me ask. So in that example, which I think is a really interesting example, new communications might well use use links with IPv4 addresses and be required to understand that, but they should also be able to run over IPv6 only links and networks. Yo, you're right. OSPF v2 is never going to do it. You're right. Yeah. And we have not actually said we're stopping working on OSPF v2. Right? I don't think we've made that statement.
No. Yeah. So do you want? So you've nodded. Do you want me to propose some wording to do this? Do you want to come up with some wording?
So I'd like to get a little more feedback, because there comes a point where maybe we say, yeah, people are using OSPF, and eventually we're using OSPF v2, and eventually we're going to stop working on OSPF v2. Eventually.
So
and
I mean,
when is that? And what does that look like?
Let's think of OSPF v2 as, it carries MPLS information in the TE opaque LSAs, right? So you can, and so v6 goes over MPLS. So the fact that you've got v4 addresses, they could be some ISO, some strange addresses, but they happen to be, v4 addresses, but a minuscule quantity of them given in the scheme of things. It seems like a lot of, it seems like basically a way to kill OSPF, all of OSPF relative to ISIS instead. So.
Okay, Michael Abramson. So, do you generally do things? So, if you propose a new LSA, wouldn't that go both into OSPF v2 and v3?
They have different encodings, so.
Functionality.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's in general, yes, things get done in parallel. So are you saying there would be like an exemption if you did both of them? Or what? What's your?
So I think the intention here is not to do anything more v4 only work.
Yeah.
If it's a feature parity thing, it's kind of still.
Yeah, but I think we're missing. So
that is so that I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that point might carry us, but it would need to be wordsmithed to point that out.
But even then, it wouldn't necessarily make sense because so right now MPLS is not done over OSPF v3 in terms of practical deployments. So carrying the TE opaque LSAs, that traffic engineering with MPLS is not done. So saying that, oh, we would have to sort of do the parallel v3 version of that. One could think of OSPF v2 turning into basically an MPLS infrastructure mechanism and have nothing to do with v4 per se, except that it uses a small number of v4 addresses. And the impact on service providers of saying, oh, you need, we can't actually modify this protocol anymore would be significant.
So Michael Abramson again. So are you saying today that I cannot use, from a protocol point of view, is there anything I can do in OSPF v2 that I can't do in OSPF v3 if the vendors implemented what's in the standard?
I think there are still gaps, yes.
So when are these going to be fixed?
I don't know.
As soon as somebody writes the drafts.
As an operator, I would like those gaps filled.
So I have to say, what is the impact on just the existence of IPv4 addresses, just on links in your network? That's the important thing.
So the fact that I can in 2016, if I were to greenfield, if I quit working and I started up at my present employer and started a new one, the fact that I have to configure IPv4 to run MPLS, I don't like that.
Yep.
Hi, Aaron Hughes again. To this point, the way I interpret this draft is that we begin work on OSPF v4 and BGP v5 and resolve these issues. We get rid of the 32-bit identifiers. We get rid of the problems where where we're required to have older protocol support. I mean, why not? If we're going to move forward, we move all the way forward to a v6 only operating environment.
So I do think, yeah, wow, they had a lot of rhubarb. Sorry, that's a phrase for muttering in the background. I do think that we need to make sure that our protocols can run v6 only, but I might be content. Well, an OSPF v2 is an unusual case that we probably need to talk a lot more about. But I'm content to say to just have a short draft saying, router IDs are not IP addresses. Carry on. Go ahead. I think it's a simpler way out. Now, there may well be other reasons.
To be clear, it's interfaces between routers with IPv4 addresses.
But it's the interfaces that matter. When you're doing link state, you need that matters. Yes.
Yeah. So it's not just the router ID, and that.
Right.
So.
But those are different things. But that's not to say that we don't want to start new work on routing protocols. And there's no routing AD in here that I see right now. So that's not. Oh, hey, there you go. So there may be other reasons you want to do new routing protocols, but I'm not going to I don't think that's in scope for us here. Well, actually, based on our charter, maybe it is.
Alvaro Rutana, Cisco, speaking as myself, not the roving AD. I was going to say that one of my concerns here, I'm not opposed to this, sounds great, is that yes, it needs some wordsmithing because new IETF work, maybe you mean brand new IETF work versus continuing, say, OSPF v2 IETF work, for example. But there's, of course, new to the IETF, OSPF v2 IETF work, etc. So some of that needs to be clarified. I think on page 1, for example, you talk about it says IPv4 only for features of vital operation. To me, that's the door, right? That is open, where if I say, well, I need to update OSPF v2 or whatever for vital operational issues, that's it, right? That's the door that's open. Of course, everywhere else in the text, except that sentence, says transition, security, and something else, not operations. So we still need to, while, and it says there, right, while IPv4 is still operational, we still need to make sure that we support that.
So I tried to close that door with the must have a problem statement based on operational experience, but if the door is too wide open.
No, right, but in there, in that other part, you mentioned security, transition, or decommissioning, not vital operations or anything like that, right? So it's, little words here and there. I think the intent is fine, and I think that eventually we just need to clarify what is really new IETF work, or continuing to support whatever we already have.
So then, question back to folks here is, should this say working group charters, or should this mean that ADs sitting in working group meetings and watching lists, seeing something that's v4 only, should swat it down? What do you want to see? Yeah, I heard an all of the above, not at the mic. So but I'm seeing Chris say, yeah, but we just talked about OSPF v2. That's a specific example. It's open work. It's still something we can work on. And having a routing AD say, no, you can't work on OSPF v2 is a serious consideration. That matters in the real world. So we need to be very sure what we want to do about it. I'll update it to, if the working group wants to adopt the draft, I will work on whatever the working group tells me to do. But when we go to IETF consensus, we're going to have, it's going to be a loud, long last call. Or maybe it won't to people, and there'll be, rough consensus that no, forget OSPF v2. You're not running the mic with that? I am shooting flames out here.
So Michael Abramson. So with the example of OSPF here, if someone came and said, I want something in OSPF v2, I don't care to make that same functionality in OSPF v3, I'm going to get really upset. There needs to be at least feature parity. I still understand that people still want this functionality in OSPF v2, which is fine, but not caring about OSPF v3 and making sure that it can do the same is really bad.
So maybe there's a wordsmithing thing that we can do here that says something like, no feature can be added that's IPv4 only unless there is an IPv6 comparable feature or equivalent feature in an equivalent system, and even maybe give the example of OSPF v2 and v3. I'm seeing some nods and shrugs and saying maybe that's the right way to finesse it. I'm hoping somebody was taking. Who's our note taker? I'm hoping you got that because I just said it out loud. Tim, I hope you did. Something like what I said will be close enough, and then we'll fight about it on the list.
We should just move this to the OSPF working group. Since the only example anybody can come up with is OSPF, it is convenient that both v2 and v3 live in the same working group.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Leah, questions. As you most probably know this draft way better than anybody else, do you think it fits the charter?
That's a great question. So I think as what you said there, it's covered under advice. But hey, wait, we have an AD here who can tell us whether it fits the charter, and if it doesn't, we can just
Terry Manderson, Intera AD. It is provide recommendations. Yes, I believe it does fit the charter. If someone would like to disagree with me, I'll happily take that offline.
And could you quickly summarize what the process for IETF consensus would be?
I probably could, but
Yeah, yeah.
Terry Manderson again. So the process for this consensus, we'll have to go through working group last call, go through IETF last call, then go through the ballot procedure with the IESG, yes, the IESG, and then it would be published. Okay.
and so yeah.
So we. Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't have a
You don't have a newcomer's badge. We didn't know
newcomers. Oh no, he's a working group chair.
that.
He's a work. Okay, I'm now very confused. I'm very confused. Okay, thank you.
My guess would be, is that we would take a hum to see whether the working group wants to adopt it. I would then spin a revision based on comments made here and notes made here, named for the working group. If we adopt it, there'll be more wordsmithing online. At some point, we'll say, "Gee, no more comments are being made. We seem close enough." And the working group chairs will issue a working group last call. Either that could be at the next meeting or a meeting, and saying, "Do you think it's ready?" And we'll take a hum. Or it could be on the just on the mailing list. And then we run probably two to 4 weeks, whichever, to see if anybody has any further comments. And then if there are no further comments or there's strong support, then it goes to IETF last call, which is the same 2 to 4 week process, which will probably generate a lot of comments. But if there is consensus, and that's judged by first the working group chairs to say, so in the working group, it's judged by the chairs. At last call, I think it's judged by the ADs, and then it goes to the IESG to put discusses on it.
Any more questions for Lee? So question for myself now, which is the same as you. We will do a hum quickly to see whether the working group wants to get this document adopted as a working group document. So I will ask, the first one will be, yes, I want this as a working group document. And the second one would be, no, I do not want this as a working group document. So we would like to have this document as a working group document. Please now. Thank you. For those of you that do not want to adopt this document as a working group document, please now. Okay, it was to be expected, but a clear, basically for the note team, a clear adoption there. Thank you, Lee. So the next session is about the localhost name, and it's Emily. And by the way, for those of you attending remote, as I am acting as a chair and not with the full power of the chair, I was unable to upload the latest version of Emily's slides. You need to send the pink.
Do we have Mike West remotely?
We have Eric Nagran.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emily Stark. I'm here from the Chrome team. I'm pretending to be Mike West. I was hoping he might appear remotely so that he can answer all the hard questions, but looks like not. So no hard questions. So I'm presenting a pretty simple proposal that Mike put together. I've been tangentially involved in some of the issues here, but this is really Mike's proposal. He just couldn't be here. So, the problem that we are trying to solve arises from the fact that 6761 advises users that they can assume that that localhost names resolve to loopback IPs. But in fact, the sections that actually outline the behavior of name resolution libraries and DNS servers frames this as a should, not a must. So DNS servers and name resolution libraries are actually free to resolve localhost names to anything they'd like, including something on the public internet. And that is surprising. Several implementations do this. We've encountered them in the wild. So the implication of this is a few things. It makes localhost names difficult to use or kind of impossible to use for security decisions. And I'll give some examples of that in a moment, but it means that there's no guarantee that localhost names actually resolve to loopback. They can go anywhere. And because of that, we are not able to give certain functionality that we would like to give to local host names, which may encourage developers to hard code address literals. And that is probably not good for all of you people who are trying to kill IPv4 because it proliferates IP address literals in applications. So I'm gonna, there we go. Okay, so just a little bit more on the motivation here comes from W3C, where there's a spec that defines a secure context in the web platform. And very roughly, a secure context is currently defined as when a frame and all of its ancestors are HTTPS or the WebSockets equivalent, or a loopback IP. But localhost is very conspicuously missing from this list of URLs that define a secure context. And that's a pain for developers. Well, I guess another key thing here is that a secure context is used to grant special privileges and functionality to web applications. So certain powerful web platform features, like the geolocation API, for example, are only available to applications that are running in secure contexts. So developers want to test these features. They want to test them on localhost, but we are currently unwilling to give them to localhost because we don't actually know what localhost is. It could be anything. So letting developers test secure context features on localhost. Moreover, you can imagine that an application might want to talk to a local service. We don't want a local service to, if that local service is being talked to from a secure context, that secure context is only really allowed to talk to it if it is also a secure URL. And so currently the mixed content specification, which defines how secure content is allowed to load sub-resources from insecure load insecure sub-resources. Currently, that spec doesn't allow localhost and will trigger mixed content warnings in web browsers for localhost, and it's using the same definition that secure context uses. So basically, the proposal is just like replace the shoulds with the musts appropriately. So there are, like 3 or 4 places in 6761 that define the behavior of name resolution libraries and DNS servers with respect to localhost names. And the proposal is to change those shoulds to musts so that applications can assume or constrain their DNS lookups for localhost names to loop back. So that's basically it. It's a pretty simple proposal. Kind of removes a need for proliferating loopback address literals, and will be very useful to us over in W3C land to add localhost to the list of URLs that define secure contexts. Any questions?
Hi, it's Dan York, and my head was exploding sort of because I was having this collision between my previous IPv6 world and my current DNS world, and just reading this because I had to actually double check that 6761 was what I thought it was. I guess my question is, why are we having this? Did Mike bring this to DNSOP or anything like that on the mailing list? I don't remember ever seeing it on the list.
I am not sure, unfortunately. I know he has been soliciting feedback from DNS people, but I'm not sure the exact communication mechanisms that he's used for that.
Well, my feedback, I guess, would be for him to say, or for him to bring this to DNSOP, because this is clearly an operational, and we've been having all sorts of fun with RFC 6761 and special use names. And in fact, we're having an interim in a couple of weeks to talk about that, or a month or so or something, right, Terry? It's somewhere in that space. So I would say that this would be something that he should send in there, and we're watching a Pac-Man eat Mark Andrews. Okay. So anyway, that would be my suggestion, because this is something that would be the group to update it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Peter Kortinik, I second that question. I was wondering why it was presented here. Second is, setting all the problems with 6761 aside, the discussion whether or not localhost should resolve to a defined result is like decades old. That doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve an answer, but there's lots of history and baggage which might lead to certain biased responses. So just be aware that this is old stuff and muddy waters. I'm not sure I understand how reliable the result is really meant to be. Again, setting 6761 aside, moving this from a should to a must doesn't guarantee any future performance, I guess is the term that you usually use. It may or may not be implemented today. Questions for localhost may leak to the root servers today, and actually at that place, the response is NX domain. So what you probably really want, and again, a warning, this is not leading anywhere. What you really might want is that the authoritative servers for that part respond with whatever result you desire there. You can't assume that is happening anytime soon.
Yeah. So two things. I just want to say, I think how this ended up here is the issue of proliferation of IPv4 literals. So I think that the relevance to this group is like, if we can remove a common, a thing that pushes developers in the directions of IPv4 literals, then that makes it easier to kill off IPv4. To your second point, yeah, like we just changing the RFC doesn't change the simple fact that implementations are not going to probably ever update. I think what we would do is make this change, and then in the secure context spec, maybe I don't know if it probably wouldn't be normative, but like make a note that this is the state of the world, and then browsers would, in fact, on some platforms, Chrome already forces localhost to resolve to loopback. So we would sort of implement it in the browser, and that would make us feel safe about giving localhost secure context. So it's sort of the purpose is not so much that implementations will change overnight, but to sort of bolster the case for the user agent kind of pretending that this is the state of the world.
So if I may ask a follow-up question. So I now hear that you're looking for maybe I'm completely wrong, but this looks like getting a justification for doing this in a particular implementation, which doesn't necessarily mean you need to change the current entry in the registry.
I don't think it's a justification so much as a thing that makes sense to do in parallel. Like, I think this is continuously surprising to people, and I think it's just sort of like how it should be. Like, people expect localhost to resolve to loopback. It should resolve to loopback, and it's a change that makes sense to do in parallel with what we would do for secure contexts.
Okay, I understand too little of this web stuff, so let's take this offline.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Emily? So maybe a questions for IETF, if you don't mind. Where do you want this work done? Where do you think it's the most suitable?
I actually think this is going to be a little argument that I'm going to have with Joel, who's the responsible AD for DNSOP. So it's going to be a really short one. What do you think, Joel?
Well, I think it's going to have to get discussed there.
No, I can relay. Joel is essentially saying he thinks it should be discussed in DNSOP.
I'm not sure that it has to be advanced there or addressed there.
Though he's not sure it has to be advanced there. Okay, so we'll put this on a placeholder because I still want to argue with Joel.
Okay.
David Skenazy, Apple, channeling Stuart Cheshire, actually, the one of the authors of 6761. He supports this. if there's consensus, usual.
Thanks for the relay. Okay, so thank you, Millie.
Thank you.
Where are the blue sheets? They disappeared somewhere. Okay, who hasn't signed them? So can you try to forward the blue sheet to those people? And then after, thank you so much. Sunset 4 edition 97 is adjourned.
Eric, can I just point out, while I was minuting, the slides that Emily presented don't seem to be in meeting materials.
Okay,
okay. I didn't minute that because I didn't hear it.
Yeah, I was assuming some shield against you, but no. Hey, I was wondering whether you will be coming. So you attending a lot of sessions? Yeah. I was there, but it was bigger room, right? So I was looking whether you were there, but I haven't seen you. It's a TV. I'm usually on the front row as well. So I'm coming on,